Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session, and today one of my favorite topics, we're going to be talking about technology, and more specifically the new technology and the new kid on the block to help you to fast track your town planning process. And in order to do that, I'm going to bring in a very special guest. So we have Will Sullivan from PropCode. Mate, welcome aboard.
Hey Rob, thanks for having me.
Mate, no problem
at all. About technology.
Yeah, mate. For those who aren't aware and who haven't been following me for many, many years, I've had a 20-year career in IT with this property thing happening as a side hustle, designing multi-million-dollar data solutions for Virgin Flights and the like, and also, have a prop tech company that I am, a co-director on, and a fairly significant shareholder called National Property Data. So technology is the thing that I love. So we're going to nerd out here today, mate. And we're going to talk about how technology can help everyone on their property journey. So firstly, why don't you first tell me a little bit about who is Will, and then who is PropCode, and then we can kind of dive into the tech that kind of sits behind all of that.
Yeah, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Will. I am American, as you may be able to hear, but I've lived in Sydney for 15 years. Believe it or not, I'm becoming a citizen tomorrow of Australia, so I'm very excited about that.
Welcome aboard, mate.
Thank you. Like to consider myself a local at this point, and I've actually worked
tomorrow. Let's not get premature.
Okay, tomorrow I will be a local. I've been a town planning consultant for a number of years here in Sydney, and I find urban growth and development, property development, just all very interesting topics. I played SimCity as a kid, and it's exciting to kind of get to play in this space in real life as an adult. So technology is something I've also been very interested in for a long time. Like yourself, Rob, I haven't built stuff for Qantas or whoever you said, but I've done
Virgin, but yes.
Virgin, sorry. Oops. I did work for Insurance Australia Group, actually, on some pretty big technical projects. So a bit of a relevance to what I'm doing these days around property data analysis.
And property data and particularly prop tech, as the industry, I guess, colloquially calls it. There's about 450 odd prop tech companies that actually sit out there solving all different issues and challenges out there. And you guys are tackling some of those problems in a very unique way. And I guess really want to dive into, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the reasons why that sit behind it. So firstly, let's start with, why did PropCode come about? What was the moment that made you go, I really need to start an entrepreneurial business?
Yeah, so business has always been something I aspired to do, but didn't quite have the either ideas or maybe boldness to actually take the leap. And I was working in town planning consultancy for a while, as I said, and in doing so, I got to know the New South Wales planning scheme inside and out, and it's just really wildly complex. The schemes vary, of course, from state to state. New South Wales is said to be one of the more complex ones. I just read a report by Business Council of Australia that ranked New South Wales dead last for ease of use of the planning system. And that's no surprise, really, to anyone who operates in the New South Wales system. So in that work,
I'd like to challenge that with a couple of other places, but we won't name them.
They did an official ranking, so New South Wales is the wooden spoon. And that proves I'm a citizen that I know that term, because we don't say that in the US. The system, it's super complex. You have all these documents and rules that kind of overlay and interact with each other, and you've really got to be across everything to be sure you're getting to the right answer. And so that's what consultants do. That's why there's a lot of us town planners in New South Wales, and you almost always need one for almost any size of project. With my technology eyes, I looked at the rules and the way they're written, and the things you have to kind of match up, and the logic in the maps and the data and the definitions and all this. And I kind of started brewing in my mind that maybe there was an opportunity for technology to be understanding these rules and the data behind them, and actually being able to give some answers to people in a more automated way. When we were in COVID lockdown a couple of years ago, and I was just really so bored that I had nothing else to do but read planning rules. And I'm not actually joking. I was really reading planning rules when I was in lockdown. I started thinking, okay, maybe I'm actually just going to try to hack something together here. And so started figuring out how to download the state policies and local policies and extract all the words from them and start piecing together how you might turn rules into logic. And so that was kind of the idea of the concept, the birth of the concept that is now PropCode a couple of years later.
Right. And so interesting beginning. And I guess in doing that, you touched on a couple of things about the complexity of the system. What many people probably don't know historically is it used to be way more complex than that. I can't remember exactly how long ago, maybe 8, maybe 10 years ago, they actually standardized on the rules. And before that, there were thousands of different zoning names. So we've got standardization of zoning names. They standardize on how everything was actually frameworked and all that sort of thing to put together, and standardized on putting it all on the one portal instead of it being disparate systems everywhere. So it used to be way worse, Queensland. But even now, even with the simplicity, give us some stats on, I guess, the numbers of documents that you had to start to ingest to actually start to build the product.
Yeah, so we're only in New South Wales right now, and you know, a key point there is technology is only as good as the information and the understanding that goes into it, right? So we really have to start with, as a company, we have to start with my expertise in New South Wales. So it's around what do we know, what do I know about the New South Wales framework? So in the course of building the technology to take these documents and do something useful with them, we discovered that there are currently 200 different state and local plans. So the LEPs and SEPs, if you're familiar with the New South Wales abbreviations, those sit on the New South Wales legislation website. There's about 7 million words across those 200 documents. And then that doesn't even touch on the next layer down, which is council written development control plans that are applicable to most development as well. There's actually 2,000 different PDFs. So if you count all the documents, all the chapters and everything in all of those council documents, 2,000 plus, and that's outside the 7 million words that are sitting on the New South Wales legislation website. So that's one state, right? We haven't talked about any of the other states or territories in Australia, just to get to those numbers.
Well, and that is across 33 councils in Greater Sydney, and I think 128 councils across all of New South Wales. So for every single different development strategy, there are 128 sets of rules on how to actually interpret that. With every single one of them have a different permutation. And if we compound that countrywide, there's actually 537 different councils. So if you wanted to do a basic 1 into 2 subdivision or a basic duplex, that's 537 different ways of actually doing that exact same thing.
Yes.
And so that's one of many problems that you saw to go, how do we is dumb it down the right question, or are we smartening it up? What are we doing? What's the...
Yeah, so good question. So, you know, we've talked about a really big problem there, and I'm not even going to pretend that we've gotten close to a solution of all of that, because as I said, we have to start in one place that we know and work our way outward. But I actually see an opportunity in that much complexity and that much fragmentation and that much different approaches to writing the rules and what that means for the developer trying to build something. I see an opportunity, right? Technology can make things possible that seemed impossible at first glance, or if you're talking about human consultancy, I can assure you that a human consultant would not know every word of every one of those 200 state documents or 2,000 DCP chapters. It's possible that a software could know every word that sits in those documents. So if you start seeing things that way, with that kind of optimism of what technology can achieve, you start going, hey, maybe actually if we put the right technology skills in a team, maybe we can actually reach that goal. You know, it's a crazy goal that you'd have a platform that knows every rule in the country and can start generating answers out of that. So
that was I guess the germination of the idea is starting to see, I guess, the issues and challenges, and there's a lot of issues and challenges even in doing, I guess, not just the complexities of that, but as an example, the DCPs that you're talking about. So, and we'll do some terminology. I might do some terminology to try and help some people out here. So we're talking New South Wales specifically here, folks. So DCP is a development control plan. That is, I guess, a council, written document that helps you to, from a lay person, interpret the actual legislation. And so the actual legislation is the LEP, so the local environment plan. And then I guess in turn, that's in turn driven up by a SEP. And forgive me, I don't remember the acronym for a SEP.
State Environmental Planning Policy. State
Environmental Planning Policy, which is effectively another overlay that says what are some of the constraints that are actually going to apply, to the property, or potentially apply to the property. And one of the issues in New South Wales in particular is they don't actually say categorically it is going to impact you or it isn't going to impact you. It says you need to check to see if it impacts you.
Yeah. So, and there's kind of a point there around to get to the right answer, you actually have to read the documents, of course, read the rules themselves. Any one of these planning documents could be accompanied by maps, and often are accompanied by maps. And so there are tools out there, and certainly the governments themselves, state government and potentially councils, will put out map tools. And so you can go find an address, look up an address, get a kind of export from one of these government-sponsored planning tools, planning map tools, but it won't tell you what the rules say about that site or about that map or about that overlay or about that special case. So you can find out that you're in an R2 zone, let's say that's the low density residential zone, now that they are standardized in New South Wales. Unfortunately, the fact that the zones are standardized does not mean that their permissibilities are standardized. So you would actually still have to go read the local plan for that property to find out whether dual occupancy is permitted on that R2 zone or not. So there's only so much that you'll find out looking at a map or a set of planning maps. You actually have to go read the documents themselves to get to the answer you need.
Which takes time and effort and experience and an acute understanding of the English language. And I failed Year 12 English. I'm proud to admit that I was not, a high achiever in that regard. So when you start to do that, I guess the time and effort taken to do that is massive. Plus, on top of that, I mean it in all seriousness, the interpretation of the English language. What does the word actually mean within the context of the sentence of the that in itself? Sometimes, if there's one word can change the entire meaning of a sentence.
Yes, very interesting, challenge there, and something that has always been kind of a thorn in the side, or maybe the hurdle to climb, if you like, of any sort of technology efforts around reading legislation, reading regulations. And with large language models having come on the scene in the last couple of years, and to everyone's kind of consciousness with ChatGPT last year, it's becoming a lot more realistic that you might actually be able to apply technology to get meaning out of those words. So that's something that we're really excited about doing at PropCode. And in fact, my co-founder, Jonah, who's the CTO, has got a long track record as a software engineer, but he specifically has worked in natural language processing. So he's really well equipped to be providing that expertise into our team. And we've already been working with these large language models to extract the right meaning out of these words. Having said that, as you're pointing out, it's very important to get the correct interpretation. And an AI out of the box is not going to know what the New South Wales definitions of things are. So there's a really important step in our process, which is we have to have that planner's expertise to kind of speak into the technology itself. And as part of the training, as part of the checking and QA, as part of kind of knowing which things point to which other things around the documents. That's how you get to the correct answer, and how you make it possible that technology could actually give an accurate answer instead of just having a shot and being completely off.
Yeah, and then on top of that, there's still the potential for ambiguity of some of that, and so then many people have gone and tested that ambiguity. In the planning environment court. Is that what it's called in New South Wales?
Land Environment core, yeah. And there'll be similar ones in every state, of course.
And so you, I guess PropCode have then gone and started to ingest some of those, I guess, interpretations and determinations to go, well, where those things have actually been contested, what was the actual outcome of that? So you've used all of that to then come up with a bucket load of, I guess, internal rules. And you touched on, I guess,
Yeah.
You gave me
Yeah,
one
that's right.
stat. You gave me one stat before, which was super interesting. It's just a basic stat on minimum lot sizes, right? So it should be really simple. You know, I'm just going to go straight to the DCP and find minimum lot sizes. So how many tables have you got just on minimum lot sizes for New South Wales?
Yeah, so there's, and we'll talk about a bit about what we've already built so far, but there's a certain case where you can build FastTrack dwellings with statewide rules, but and they override the local rules. However, they do call out to local rules in one particular case, which is around a minimum lot size to be allowed to build that particular type of medium density in particular. So if there is a local rule, that still applies, even though it's a statewide rule set. And we have had to go find all those local rules from about 150 local plans. And I came up with about 400 of these local rules that are built into our system now. And a really key thing around that process was I had to go find court cases to understand what is the actual correct interpretation of which rules you pick out and which rules you actually don't. So sort of general minimum lot size for any development is actually not relevant to that case according to the court rulings. It has to be very specific to a duplex or very specific to terraces in order to become part of that statewide rule set. So we take that really seriously. Like it's you know, we're building in our interpretation ultimately into an automated system. So we've got to be sure that we've got the right interpretation to begin with. So court cases are definitely the best source really of where it's been tested and someone's ruled this is what the word means.
Very good. So all of that, I guess, identifies, I guess, just the tip of the iceberg of some of the many, many problems that are sitting for anyone trying to do any property development anywhere in the country. But having tackled it just in New South Wales, you've now gone and, I guess, mapped this out using a series of technologies. So this is let's start nerding out. Let's start giving some people some education. So everyone at the moment is talking about AI, like it's the flavor of the month. But you guys have been using AI for a number of years, well before it actually became the flavor of the month. But there's a number of technologies. There's machine learning. There's AI, artificial intelligence, then there's basic image recognition. There's a whole bunch of technologies that are sitting out there that could potentially have been used to attack the problem. Why don't we just give people some insights into what are the differences between those technologies and what have you used or the combination of tools that you use to actually try and attack this problem?
Yeah, so super nerdy discussion. If you love technology, stay tuned. Machine learning is something that's been happening for a while now. So if you've used Netflix, you've used machine learning. So that's a process where there's a thing called neural networks. Your brain is a neural network, obviously an organic one. And so, you know, computer researchers said, hey, let's build artificial neural networks, you know, using obviously circuits and programming code, but working in the same way that you kind of organically make connections that kind of prefer certain outcomes and you train it to say like that's a good outcome and that's a bad outcome. And in the computer, it's building up this neural network. And so that's what machine learning is. And you then apply that to image recognition is actually a kind of an example that you often see. If you've ever clicked all the traffic lights in a Google CAPTCHA, you've helped contribute to machine learning to train Google's neural network about what does a traffic light look like so that it can then go find that in all of its street view images.
That's very clever. I didn't realize that they did that.
Yep. You've helped Google a lot every time you did a CAPTCHA. Then there's AI. Now, AI is a really broad term, and people have been using the term since the 1950s. It can mean almost whatever you want it to mean. It's taken on a bit of a more specific meaning in the last year or two. There's this new thing, and really the proper term would be large language models. So when you talked about ChatGPT, or seen the Bing disaster earlier this year. That was pretty amusing to watch that. Bing falling in love with people. Those are large language models, and what they've done is taken in literally billions and billions and billions of words of English language content, and they figured out which words appear next to each other very often, and so it kind of finds patterns among how humans use the language, and using those patterns, it can then formulate text, but it's kind of in a correlation sense. So it goes, hey, this word is often followed by this word, is often followed by this word. And that's really simplifying it. It's obviously much more sophisticated. But there's a lot that it can do to generate stuff. So to spit out kind of natural sounding language, but also to read text, figure out patterns and linkages between words and concepts. So large language model is something that we're using in PropCode. And indeed, it's kind of the technology that has actually made it feasible to deal with that volume and that amount of documents and words that I talked about earlier.
And so all that's super interesting, but is it just aim the machine at it, point the button and pull the trigger and go fix that? What do we have to do to actually teach it how to learn itself? Because like a child has the potential to be absolutely anything. We have to nurture that child and give it, a set of rules and structure and all those sorts of things around it. What do you have to do to actually teach your AI and your machine learning? How do you teach that the rules to actually learn how to interpret this?
Yeah, very good question. So if anyone with GPT at all, you've probably discovered that it can give pretty funny answers or pretty incorrect answers potentially. I've tried to get some of the planning questions, and it will literally invent codes that don't exist. So it'll make up the New South Wales medium density code, allows you to build dual occupancies in any residential zone. I'm like, no, there's no such thing. It's just, like I said, it's just a correlation of words, and it's just spitting things out. So what we have to do, we're not really using it in that output sense. So we're not using it in a way that it's going to spit out an answer. What I will say, we're testing that, we're playing with that, and hopefully it will improve enough that that's something we could put out, but not yet. The way we actually want to use it is more in an internal sense, that it helps us digest that volume of rules and regulations and documents. And we, with enough training data, or I as the current person in the team who's got the planning background, we say, this is what it should interpret to. And here's a bunch of cases, 100, 200, 500 cases of that text becomes this logic or this kind of rule in a more standardized way. And with enough training, you can get pretty good accuracy, but we will always expect that there's a human review element internally for us to take stuff into our engine, into our platform. And I think that's really important. People in the property industry are making pretty valuable decisions, right, based on the advice that they may get or the info they may get from services, from tools, from whatever. And so for us to be something that people want to use, it's obviously got to put out a correct and reliable answer. So that's something that's really top of mind for PropCode. Is there's no point putting out something that's kind of halfway useful or accurate sometimes,
No, absolutely. So hence lots of different people doing lots of different developments and lots of different potential use cases to solve, I guess, the challenges that you saw. You've chosen one specific use case. So I guess as your starting point, and no doubt, and certainly from our offline chats, it is definitely not the finish line, but it's the first of many products that you've got out there. So firstly, tell us what it is that you've actually built, and why is that, I guess, so beneficial to the people specifically in New South Wales who are starting out in small scale developments.
Yes. So again, we've had to start with something I know and a section of the New South Wales rules where I can confidently interpret and understand and pick out the right rules and the right applicability and all that. So the place we've started is the complying development rules in New South Wales. Now, if you don't know New South Wales, this is a FastTrack approval pathway. So most things will go through a development application to usually council. However, there's an opportunity in certain cases that you can do a fast track approval. In fact, by a certifier, you don't even need to get an approval from council for the planning approval step. And so complying development, or CDC as we call it, that's complying development certificate, that's the approval itself. That's what you would often actually want to do if you could, if you're eligible, if your property and your project are eligible for it. So those are statewide rules. They're not local in nature, so that is kind of a great place to start in terms of us and a minimum viable product, we call it in the startup world, an MVP, or proof of concept. We can start with a statewide rule set that opens up a lot of opportunity for users, especially PDN users who are interested in the type of developments that are eligible for this. So a lot of residential projects up to medium density duplex terraces can be done with this fast track pathway.
Yeah, and in other states there are other fast track approval processes. So in, I guess, Southeast Queensland, there's one called Risk Smart. In Victoria, there's one called Vic Smart, and there are similar ones all the way around the country that have different kinds of development approvals that are actually allowed. But if we dumb it down into, I guess, human speak, even though we're talking machine language and that sort of stuff, we're going to dumb it down to human speak. The whole idea is it is that compliant. We get a tick in every single box, and if we get a tick in every single box, then they go, well, why does it need to go to council? Like it should just be an easy fast track process, because there's nothing that people can complain about because everything's compliant, and hence
that's right,
complying development.
Yeah. So in the way that the rules are written here in New South Wales for this fast track approval case, there are a lot of rules that the property itself has to meet. So regardless of what your design is for the building itself, the land has to be in this sort of place, or not in this sort of place, or in this zone, or not in a flood risk area, or that sort of thing. And it depends on which type of building you're trying to build. So a dwelling house is, a single detached house is going to have a different set of requirements to a duplex, to a set of terraces. So we've started around those because they are pretty black and white rules, which makes them obviously quite easy to translate into technology, into an automated answer. So we can say pretty definitively, a property is or is not eligible by virtue of having passed all of these requirements, or failed even just one is enough to rule it out for this fast track process.
Yeah, and it's probably worthwhile just giving people a small history lesson here on how CDC came about and why it came about. And fundamentally, the state government was seeing lots of delays in the development approval process. Housing was actually starting to become lagging behind the actual population growth. So we're having a massive shortage between supply and demand. And they went, well, we need to come up with an easy method where we can get smaller scale projects that are going to be, let's just say, less offensive to the community out, so that we can actually get more housing stock out there. So based on that, there's some very specific use cases and specific product type that it can be done. So this is not for building your 20-story apartment complex. So what are the kinds of, I guess, product or yield? What are the kind of stock that we can actually create out of this?
Yeah, so the CDC rules have, there's a number of codes that cover, as I said, different building types. So what you can do is a ordinary detached house. You can do a secondary dwelling, and you can do the two of those together as a project. You can do duplexes, or dual occupancy, meaning two separate detached dwellings on one lot. You can do a set of terraces, so attached dwellings all facing a road. And then you can do a manor house. So that's the special case of a flat building, but it's only 3 or 4 apartments in a 2-story building.
So manor house is a brand spanking new product genre, and a lot of people haven't actually come across that. It is, I guess, almost a Frankenstein of an apartment complex and a townhouse complex jammed into the one, made to look like a house, so it doesn't look offensive from the street.
Yeah, and they're not actually new. You see a lot of them in some of the older suburbs in Sydney, but the definition probably is a bit new.
Yeah, but a limitation of 4, as I understand it, so 4 units inside the one dwelling looking like a house. So from the street, it doesn't look like your typical everyday apartment complex.
Yeah. So those are the CDC FastTrack options. And so that's obviously of great interest to a lot of small scale developers who like to take on, that sort of size of project that's not obviously getting it to a huge budget, not huge complexity, and something where you don't necessarily end up with 10, 20, whatever units that you're trying to sell. So great opportunity for small developers to do as almost a side project. Definitely heard of people doing those as side projects, and getting this FastTrack approval brings a lot more certainty into your planning process because you can get that approval actually in a few weeks instead of potentially taking 3 to 6 or more months going through council with an ordinary DA.
Yeah, now I want to put some clarifications around that just for everyone's context, because the approval is in a couple of weeks, but you still have to prepare for the approval.
Yeah.
So you still have to go and engage with consultants, and you still have to get designs done, and you still have to get reports done, and you still have to do all the pre-work. But once you've done the pre-work, instead of lodging to council and sitting back and twiddling your thumbs and waiting, it bypasses the council process and goes to a building certifier, which in many other states they have different names. So building surveyor, known in other locations, and they, I guess, review the rules and go, I can see what the rules are. I can see what your design is. Do the two look the same? Tick.
Yep, and that's as good as a DA. And in fact, you don't even need a separate construction certificate.
And so that approval process, as you said, 14 days typically to get that through. Much cheaper. Now, the difference between that and a typical development approval is because you must get a tick in every single box. There are predefined rules in the size of the dwellings and the yield that you're going to get out of the side and that sort of thing. So if your intention is to push the boundaries, if your intention is to get one extra dwelling out of there, because that's the thing that you need, then CDC is not for you, folks. You need to go down the traditional development approval pathway and go and beg council to say, can I please have that extra dwelling, and give them all the relative arguments to make that happen. So at this point in time, I guess if you're trying to go down there, the PropCode tool yet can't help you with that, but no doubt that's something in the future that you're going to help with. But for now, it's, hey, can we get a tick in every single box? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely a key feature of this CDC FastTrack approval process that you have to, as you said, meet every single rule. So both the land itself, the property, the location, and then the building design have got to meet every single rule. So if you do, you've got the certainty that it is automatically approved. There's no potential that it's rejected because someone didn't like it.
So what are some of the, I guess, the general requirements that would fall into a CDC type approvable property? Let's just say approvable property. Told you I was
So eligibility for CDC, it often is, there was a set of general requirements, really exclusions around, because of the nature of this being FastTrack approval, you obviously can't have it happening in sensitive locations. So there's quite a long list of environmental cases where, if something is mapped in a certain way, then you wouldn't be able to do CDC on that site. There's some things like not in Kosciuszko National Park. So if you're looking to build a duplex in Kosciuszko National Park, can't, sorry. But other things that maybe you wouldn't think of, like acid sulfate soils, class 1 or 2, or ANEF, so or is it Brisbane? That'd be New South Queensland. But some of these other random exclusions, you may not think to check or kind of have a sense that this is actually an exclusion within 100 meters of a marine park. And some of the mapping of, although it's water, obviously, some of the mapping of marine parks comes right up to the coastline or even up into river entrances. So there are quite a few things that can come in. And then with the specific typologies, so if you're building a house, if you're building a duplex or the manor house, there will be specific lot width, lot area requirements. So geometry is one of those. You couldn't do duplexes on a battle axe lot, for example, things like that.
So lots and lots to think about, and hence why your product is, I guess, required. I guess, maybe not required. If you want to do brute force, you can actually get it done. But
people have been doing it for years.
Absolutely. But I guess why you saw the opportunity there to say, well, this is the kind of thing that, look, the big scale developers don't want to do this little stuff. And the little developers don't necessarily have the time or the expertise to actually interpret all of that complexity. And so you saw that niche to say, well, this is kind of the Goldilocks opportunity to go not too heavy, not too hot, not too cold, but this is just right.
Yeah, that's right. And really the primary way we're thinking about it as PropCode is we've just talked about this big vision about a system that might know every rule in every document. And that's something we can't build overnight to cover 7 million plus words or however many millions of words. We had to have a place to start that was within scope, that we could actually reasonably do all the rules somewhat manually as a first pass to be sure that they're correct. So the CDC scope was a really good place for us to start with that. Again, it was statewide, so we have a relatively big market or geography where those rules actually apply and are helpful to people. And then the number of rules that we had to take in was within reach. So we've actually got a bit over 1,000 rules in the platform right now. And so a lot of that we have done somewhat manually. But again, that's kind of the test case for us in terms of scaling to something much bigger using the scaling power of AI.
So with that, how many properties are there in New South Wales that could potentially be assessed as plausibly eligible for CDC?
Yeah, good question. So New South Wales has about 3.5 million properties. So our platform has all of that data, has all of every single property in the state, and then all of the map layers. There are 40 plus map layers that we have to take in that are mentioned one way or another in the various CDC rules. As I said, we've got 400 of the local minimum lot size rules that are still relevant because they're called out by the CDC rules. And so among all that, we've run calculations and I've determined, among other things, that only about 45% of the state's residential properties are eligible to do a duplex with CDC. So that'd be one example. I think 70% were eligible for a single detached house.
That's still 1.5 million properties that has the potential.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess creating a duplex then creates 3 million new dwellings. So that's exactly. That's going to look after, I guess, some of the population growth for the next little while, but not enough.
Yeah. So, and it's an interesting point, like CDC, this whole FastTrack approval stream, and this would go in any state as much as in New South Wales. It's a real policy lever, and you mentioned it before, around housing supply. So we've already been talking with state government, actually, about our technology and the potential for people trying to do developments to better understand what they're actually allowed to do. A lot of my work as a consultant previously was actually policy consulting, so talking to state or local government teams and departments about planning questions. And the kind of technology that we're building, I think, makes some of those policy discussions a lot more powerful and potentially gets to and opens up some solutions around how the planning system can or maybe isn't yet contributing to the goals that we have, like housing supply.
And for anyone crazy enough to want to do this themselves, what are some of the gotchas that they should be aware of that your system picks up that you think that they may not necessarily pick up?
Yeah, so if you're in New South Wales, if you're wanting to do one of these FastTrack approval processes, so the CDC, one thing is you can only do this on up to 2-story buildings. So you couldn't do it if you either building a 3-story or taller building or even for alterations and additions, the CDC fast track approval can be done potentially, but only if the house is no more than 2 stories. So that'd be one example. There are other things like you have to watch out for flood risk or bushfire prone land. The terraces is something that's specifically ruled out on bushfire prone land. As I said before, battle axe lots, you can't do some of the medium density options, although you could do a dwelling house, an ordinary detached house. So there are quite a few things like that. And as I mentioned, there's a long list of the environmental sensitive areas that you may not know how to check. Some of them are not planning maps. Some of them you actually have to go to other sources, other kind of government agencies to find out whether this or that applies.
Yeah. So as a basic workflow, as I understand it, and I've got a little bit of experience, but I haven't done a lot in New South Wales specifically. You got to be checking, I guess, the land zone itself. You got to check on the potential that the CDC might then apply. You're going to then review the CDC code itself, check all of the requirements for all of those, and then the knock-on effects of every single one of those requirements. Go read all of those codes, and see whether or not it does apply, and then start to interpret that, and then where possible, then go where we think it's then possible, then go get the appropriate reports to either include or exclude that. So it's quite a big process.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're a property developer, you're obviously looking for sites to acquire. And so you may be starting with listings on the market, or you may be prospecting across a number of addresses or suburbs. You're probably not going deep dive into each one of these addresses. You probably don't have time for that, right? So you could end up, with properties on your short list that actually are not eligible to do this fast track approval. And you may be stuck with something that you've actually purchased and then find out, hey, you can't get the approval in 3 weeks. It's going to take potentially 6 months with that particular council. So it's really something that if you could check it quickly and easily before you've even purchased sites, you certainly would want to.
Yeah. So I might do a tiny little screen share at the moment now, Will, and let's start with, for anyone crazy enough to want to do this themselves, and they want to look up all the rules. You guys have got a free little tool that you're calling the PropCode library. So you're basically, you've gone and collected those thousands of documents and jammed them into one location. So if anyone is crazy enough to want to read them,
that's right.
Now hopefully it is coming up on screen. It is. So tell us a little bit about what they can do to access this, where they can. Well, I've got the link down below. So folks, if you want to access this is Will's free gift to you.
Yes, it is actually free. So in New South Wales, again, sorry for other states, we are coming to you, I promise. In New South Wales, there are a few different types of documents. So we talked about these before. So there's kind of tiers of what's kind of higher priority and writing lower tiers, but they're all here, which is really exciting. So the SEPs and the LEPs, these are ones that you can already read them on the Wales legislation website. We'd love to think that our reader and our viewer here is a little bit easier to use and a little more feature packed. The real value add with PropCode library is, as you say, we've gathered documents from a lot of different sources into one spot. So all of this is a game changer, all of the development control plans are all in this one list and viewable in this one interface. So if I'm looking at a certain area of New South Wales or council, for example, Parramatta's got a hodgepodge of documents. These are all listed in one place. So I can easily jump into any one of these documents without having to go to Parramatta Council. If I even put in an address, I can actually see right away which documents apply to this location, and then not just see the list, but actually then go read the documents directly within the tool. So that's a real big time saver.
Yeah, you touched on Parramatta as an example, but it's not the only one that fits into this category. Going back a number of years, a lot of councils were amalgamated. A lot of councils joined together, and instead of one council, there were 3, 4, 5 councils, and all those rules didn't necessarily all get cleaned up at the same time. And so one council became responsible for managing 5 sets of rules. And so slowly but surely, they're going through a process of cleaning some of that up and standardizing on those things. But in the meantime, that's why that complexity starts to exist.
Yes. So we're really excited about putting these together in one spot. You know, we have to do it to build the deeper technology that we want to build. So really, as a byproduct, I think it made sense for us to just say, hey, here's all the documents that we found. We may as well put them into a tool where you guys can read them as well, while we then go build deeper tech with all of this text.
So whilst we're at it, mate, and while we're doing the screen share, why don't you just kind of whip across and actually show us what strangely looks so simplistic. We just talked about all the problems, and then you're going to go whiz bang, and in 30 seconds you're going to go, look what I did.
Yes. So complying developments, we've just been talking about how you determine that eligibility. Can you do it? Is there an option? The tool will tell you that instantly in a way that really would have taken quite a lot of research to get to a definitive answer on your own. So I'll show you, these are the actual rules that you'd have to scan and work out. Where's the mapping data that shows you each one of these? And it's quite a long list. You know, there's a lot of very random things on here. I mentioned acid sulfate soils before. There's some excluded areas that you'd have to know about where you just simply can't do complying development because the council has excluded it. Significantly contaminated land within the meaning of blah, 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 all these things. And probably most houses are not in 4-shower areas, so we've gone ahead and assumed that you've passed that. And then for each of the types of building that you can build that are an option with CDC, where there's a code for a CDC, we've checked their individual requirements. So this particular property has, most of them actually, has quite a lot of options for CDC, for FastTrack approval. So we can do an ordinary house, we can do a side-by-side dual occupancy attached. Now, as an example, we can't do a detached dual occupancy, so 2 separate houses on the one lot. Now, why can't we do that? It's because there's no permissibility with consent in that zone, in this R2 zone. And we mentioned zones and harmonizing. The permissibilities are actually all different across each of the zones across the state, even if they're all called R2 low density residential. So that's something that our system checks each one of the 150 or so LEPs to find out that permissibility for the zones.
Very good. Now, unfortunately, the internet bandwidth is not giving that a very good. It's a little bit grainy, so I might just turn that off for a moment. But mate, fantastic. I guess that now I can see that there's going to be 1,000 letters sent to 32 Holden Street come Monday.
I'll spoil it for you. They've already got a duplex on the site.
Look at that.
Yes. Sorry.
No doubt because they bought one of your reports and decided it was going to be. Mate, very, very simple, easy to use, and that sort of thing. Without doing the sales pitch, cheap. What's the cost?
Yeah, it is cheap. We would love for people to be using this early in their process. So that could be developers, it could be even homeowners wanting to understand their potential for renovations or a knockdown rebuild. The architects who are helping on one of these projects for a client. So we've actually set it at a really low price, not because we think it's not valuable, but because we just want people to go, oh, it's a no-brainer. Of course, I'll have a look to find out this answer and shortcut my process. So to look up one address, it costs $49.95 plus GST. So it's $49.95, not $4,900. And if you want to check a lot of addresses, we've actually done some really crazy pricing, to be honest, and we've said it's just the same price, $49.95 per month, to find unlimited addresses and get
on a subscription basis. Clearly, yes.
Yes, on a subscription, and no commitments. So when you're in site searching mode, jump on PropCode and use it as long as you need, and there's no 12-month commitment or anything like that.
There you go. So no reason to not be using it. I guess You only need one deal, folks, to actually start your property development journey. So if you can pre-qualify one site, then there's still a whole bunch of stuff that that sits behind this. So
Yes.
we touched on this, I guess, in our pre-chat. Just because it can be done, folks, doesn't mean it should be done, right? So there's still, is it going to be developable? Sorry, so we've done that. Is it developable? Tick. But is it profitable? Well, you've still got to do a whole bunch of homework on that. So you need other tools and resources to try and, I guess, do your sales research. What's the raw site worth? What's the finished product going to sell for, that sort of thing? And I guess a little bit of a self plug. I guess the National Property Data product is going to be a fantastic product to actually help you do that sales research tool. So you need sales research tool and a development research tool for any site that you're doing, no matter what. And I think that 1-2 combo is exactly what everyone needs to actually get there. So, mate, that is, I guess, fantastic. And thank you very much for actually showing us that. What's next? So are you going to develop more product for New South Wales specifically, because you've already gone and ingested that? Or are you looking to, I guess, do a similar product for the rest of the country and then loop back around and then kind of do layer 2?
Yeah, so the very next thing we're doing, I showed you all those New South Wales documents in the library, in PropCode library, and we, because it's really honestly not too hard to go grab the documents, we actually just want to expand that nationally. So we want to be, again, generously letting everyone come for free and use this library and have it be the one-stop shop, the starting point for planning research for any location in the country. So that's the next thing we want to get to, and really hopefully it only takes us a couple of months to roll that out, to get all those documents in one place. And then beyond that, the next step is to take this wealth of rules knowledge and really go a lot deeper and figure out, do we build something that's like this CDC analysis, eligibility, potential, but for any DA, for any building type, for any use case? Or do we maybe go in other directions? Maybe there's a mapping tool that people will find really valuable. I think that these days people talk a lot about data is the new gold or the new oil, and I think that I don't feel like anyone's really tried, from what I can tell, to take in regulations themselves as data. So I think that if we do this work of finding all these documents, pulling them into our system, we're in a really great position to then go and say to people, hey, actually, we could build something for that question, for that answer, because we've got all that content, all those millions and millions of words in our hands, and with the power of AI and whatever's around the corner, who knows what's about to be released. We're really confident that we can give some really interesting answers once we've got all that text.
Mate, have loved sharing the story and nerding out with you today. So thank you very much for sharing that. Folks, Will has also done a recent presentation at one of our Sydney events only a couple of weeks ago. So if you are an annual member, you can actually go and I guess have a look at the recording of that. If you're not an annual member, or if you just want to turn up to one of our other events, we run these all the way around the country. So Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide, we run these events. So make sure you actually turn up to one of those. We can hang out with, I guess, property developers doing all things property development, hang around, have a few beverages afterwards, and in some instances even kick on for dinner. So very much a community, mate. So thank you for your contribution both today and also for the recent presentation. And otherwise, mate, hoping that, I guess I'm looking forward to seeing, I guess, the next version of whatever it is that PropCode actually comes out with. And what sort of collaboration can PropCode and National Property Data come up with, mate? That's next on the agenda.
Yeah, like I said, data is the new gold, and you guys have a lot to share. So
we have a lot of data. That is great, as do you. And so I guess the terminology is called enrichment. One piece of information plus another piece of information. When you add them together, you can get, I guess, a interpreted result that then nobody else could have actually got individually. So lots of opportunities for lots of things, and National Property Data are trying to work with a whole bunch of technology providers to do exactly that and become the product of the future. And you guys are equally doing the same. So, mate, congrats. Yeah,
thanks. We would love for PropCode to be really accessible to people. So if that means plugging into a platform like National Property Data, we're eager to put that information wherever people can access it.
Mate, looking forward to seeing where that goes. Until then, mate, been a pleasure, and we'll see everyone else at one of our upcoming meetups. Till then,
Thanks,
bye for
Todd.
now.